I tried for over 2 years to start my first online business, but I kept on losing motivation because it was hard and my job was good enough. Everything you can think of to motivate yourself, I tried it, but nothing worked. Even though I knew I could do more and I wanted a life that was bigger with more freedom than the one I had, I would get tired or frustrated and get pulled back into what I knew my reality. Before I knew it, another 2 or 3 months would have passed without me working on my business. This is where people will tell you to not rely on motivations. Instead, build systems. I love systems. I am a former engineer, but I also completely disagree with that unwisdom. It's not that we don't have motivation or we shouldn't rely on motivation. In fact, I believe motivation is one of the strongest driving forces that we have. It's just that most of the time, we haven't found the right motivation for us. For me, the dream business and life I wanted wasn't motivating enough to push past my fears and obstacles at that time. But I didn't realize it until I stumbled onto the right motivation for me at that point. Unfortunately, first, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. During the worst of her chemotherapy, I couldn't be with her in Houston. My job was in New York and I couldn't take off that much time unless I took an unpaid leave, which financially I couldn't do. Then, just as my mom was starting to recover, my sister got hit in the eye with a snowball and the doctor said she might lose her vision. For several weeks, she had to sit in the dark and rest both eyes to give herself the best chance of recovery. I was able to have her stay with me, but I had to leave her to go to work. I remember closing the door on her in the dark. She was listening to an audiobook, her eyes were closed, and she was trying to be so brave. Bye, Louie, have a good day. I felt like such a failed sister that I couldn't be with her when she was so scared. But she got better and I started slipping back into my comfortable habits. Then one day I get a call out of the blue from my mom. Your dad just collapsed and they're rushing him to the hospital. They don't know what's going on. I remember feeling like I couldn't afford to buy a ticket for the next day because it was too expensive. So I bought one for the day after. I also felt like I needed that extra day to pass off my work to other people before I could take off. When I got back, my dad was already out of surgery. Walking into his room, I had never seen him look so weak. This was my dad, this big 6'3" guy. But he was so pale and there were all these tubes coming into and going out of him. It didn't hit me just how close I'd come to never seeing my dad again until the doctor explained how urgent his situation was. If they'd figured out his condition or rushed him into surgery just a few hours later, that would have been too late. And here I was, concerned about saving some money on a plane ticket and getting my work perfectly in order. By the time I left, my dad was home, but still recovering. As I said bye to him, sitting on the couch, still kind of out of it, I promised myself I was never going to let that happen again. I would never not have the time or money to not be there for my family or anyone I cared about when they needed me. And that was the motivation I needed to face my fears and not settle for my good but not great job. The point is not that you need anywhere even close to this degree of horribleness to happen to you, and I hope it never does. But this is why I truly believe we all have the motivation we need within us. We are all capable of building our dream business and lives. You just have to figure out what's really going to drive you, even if it's different from what you think it should be or what you've been told should motivate you. If this is landing for you, let me know in the comments. I know for me back then, I would have appreciated it so much if someone would have told me this, because for too long, I just assumed that I wasn't motivated enough. But you won't necessarily always be motivated by an altruistic reason, and that's okay too. After I crossed 6 figures in my first business and left my job, my motivation started changing. Now that my business was growing and I had the freedom that I had wanted so badly, I started getting in my own head, especially since I wasn't in school or a job anymore where what your next goal should be is usually so clear. But back then, I was not self-aware enough to realize that and figure out what the next best goal would be for me. So you know what I started doing? I started looking at what everyone else was doing, and I tried to prove myself by growing bigger and faster than the people I saw. This worked up to a certain point because I love a good competition, but I realize now that that attitude of constantly striving and comparing yourself to others is incredibly unhealthy. Back then though, I didn't care. I just wanted to establish myself and prove to all the people who never believed in me and thought I would never amount to much that they were wrong. Thankfully, I've worked through that now. But it took me many years to develop the self-awareness and self-love to be able to let that go. Plus, healthy or not, that mentality helped me cross 7 figures in my first year because I wanted so badly to prove myself to the world and honestly, to myself too. Wherever you are and whatever is motivating you, no judgment at all. Building a business is frankly a work of love and service because the only way a business succeeds is by providing value. I will say I do recommend working through those negative mentalities, but I'm not on my high horse saying you gotta be perfect. Nobody is. Whatever motivates you right now, positive or negative, it's in you anyways. Might as well make it work for you and turn it into fuel to help you hit your goal sooner. High five to that. But you might be wondering, having worked through those negative mentalities, what do I use to motivate myself now? It took me about 10 years, but I've recently started figuring out what my big purpose that drives me is. I'm not quite ready to share it yet, but only because it's still new and I'm letting it fully crystallize. But I promise as soon as it's ready and fully clear, I will definitely be sharing it with you. But the reason I'm mentioning it is that it's taken me almost 10 years after starting my business to figure out my big vision and purpose. This goes against so much common unwisdom that you need to have it figured out before you can get started. Don't let not knowing what your big purpose is keep you stuck. Start with what you know and what interests you. If you are taking action, your big purpose will reveal itself when the time is right. In the meantime, how do I recommend motivating yourself? This is gonna sound kind of trivial, but I promise you it's not. I focus on having fun in my business by doing the things that are fun for me, like learning how to write good emails, create new courses, and create better videos. Plus, the better I get, the more fun it becomes, and the more my business naturally grows. Follow your fun. First of all, it will make your business more profitable because you will stand out and gravitate naturally to the strategies that work best for you. Second, it's very motivating to enjoy what you do and realize you can make great money from it. Plus, the more you're enjoying what you're doing, the more you become aligned for whatever your big purpose is. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What is your biggest takeaway from everything I've shared? Keying into your motivation is so important because when you do, you become unstoppable. So let me know. I would love to hear.